And here we go. So, thank you everyone for joining us today for our motivation talk of how to retain and keep English language learners engaged. Now, a lot of these ideas definitely can go across the board for HSE or anything like that, but definitely we are going to be focusing a little bit more on our English language learners. All of these webinars and workshops are very interactive. So if you have any questions, especially since we are such a small group, you can always feel free to either turn on your camera, turn on your microphone to ask a question, or in the chat, you can put a question and we'll be ready to answer. So my name is Meriah Guillen. See, Jamie, here's our typo. My name is Meriah Guillen, and I will be the presenter for this ELA session. And joining us is Jamie. She's our wonderful moderator. So if you do have any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat, and Jamie will either unmute herself or she can answer them, or we'll just kind of tag team it as we go. But we're both here to help you with any questions that you may have. All right. So for this session, we are going to explore some techniques, that motivate students and help to promote retention. We really do want to focus on that retention portion, and we want to apply some strategies that will help these ELLs, set attainable goals. So our big thing is how can we make students more engaged in their learning and have them want to stay in a classroom setting. Now we understand that life happens, and sometimes it's not always possible for them to stay in class, but how can we, as much as we can, help students to stay within our programs? So we're going to do a quick myth or fact. And so what's going to happen is on your screen, there are going to be 3 different questions, and we'll do them one at a time. So please look at the questions on your screen and just state if they are myth or fact. So it'll be a multiple choice. And Jamie's going to go ahead and launch that. The first question, if you don't mind.
All right, I've launched that poll. So Jen, on the bottom right of your screen, you should have gotten a notification that there was a poll launched. If you click on that, you can answer it.
I don't think I was fast enough. Sorry.
It's okay. On the bottom right of your screen, you should see a triangle, a square, and a circle. That's your activities icon.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Click on that and go to polls, and it'll be there.
Oh, thanks. I'm not very savvy on Google Groups, actually. Okay.
Google Meet has changed a lot, so don't feel bad.
Or Meet, sorry. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. So Jen says, fact, most learners like to be self-directed and actively involved in learning. Fact.
Yes, that is a fact. When we give students the opportunity to take their learning into their own hands, it changes the way they look at the world. Even though a lot of them are a little bit more have that traditional mindset of, the teacher has to give me all the information. When we put it into their lap, something happens and something changes, and learning becomes a little bit more interesting for them. All right, second question, myth or fact? Thank you, Jamie.
All right, so Jen says, fact, learners learn better when they feel good about learning.
Yes, they do. So again, when we put it into their lab, if we just say, okay, here it is, teach the materials, okay, that's part of it. But when we actually give them something exciting and something that they can actually cherish and celebrate their successes, if they feel that sense of accomplishment, they are going to feel a lot better about it and be comfortable with continuing on. And our last one, myth or fact?
All right, so this third statement, humans learn differently depending on their age, Jen says fact.
This one is actually a myth. So this is something that a lot of us, and especially instructors, teachers, administrators, we tend to think that if a student is older, then it's going to be a little bit harder, or if they're younger, it's going to be easier. It is actually a myth because it depends on how materials is presented. It's never about whether their age is hindering them or allowing them to advance. That's never the problem. It's actually the mindset that we have, and it's always going to be how is it presented. Age has very little to do with it. Now, of course, if there is some sort of, as we age, sometimes we get a little bit more forgetful if we have like Alzheimer's or something like that. But overall, age has nothing to do with it. It's all about mindset, which is real exciting to, when you think about it. It's, if you give someone, there's like this, I did a lot of psychology and sociology, but they used to, for like circuses, they would get an elephant from a very young age and they would tie a huge block and a chain around its leg. And as it got older, that cement block, they would make it smaller and smaller to eventually they would just be, there would just be like a cement block that, the 4-pound block with a chain. But the elephant had already engraved in its mind that that block wouldn't move because they were trained from a young age. So age has nothing to do with it. It's all about mindset. Awesome. So we're going to talk about retention. Oh, that was fun. See, I love these things. I love giving webinars. I love doing workshops because it's so fun. You never know what you're going to learn. But what is retention? We're going to talk a little bit about it because retention is one of these words that we definitely throw around a little bit within our programs. And so we want to talk about it just for a moment. Retention is a process which students have to acquire that institutional fit. They have to be able to exhibit some sort of existence and continuation until they graduate or until they finish what they have accomplished. The goal of retention is to keep learners in a program until they achieve their goals. Now, programs change. It could be from one program to the next. In our adult education, if for ELLs, typically it's that they, excuse me, is that they are in our ESL classes and their goal is to complete ESL classes to continue on to HSE. And then from our HSE, then they continue on to college. That is kind of the mindset that we have if you are teaching any sort of ELL student. Now, of course, there can be some different things if they get their, like if they have a degree in another country and they get it translated, that might change some of their mindset or their pathways a little bit. But typically our goal whenever they're in our program is to start them from one step to another. So the goal of our retention is to keep the learners until they have achieved their specific goals. Now, as I was reading through this and getting presented, one of the things that popped out was the idea of persistence. So the idea of retention and persistence kind of go hand in hand, but persistence, really does put a lot more on the students. It's about intensity and duration. And the one part, and you can read through this and that's fine, but the one thing that I wanted to show was that persistence ends or that retention ends when the student decides to stop learning. Now, a lot of it does come on us as instructors. We want to make sure that our classes are engaging and we want to make sure that we're doing the most for our students, but ultimately it's for the student to decide whether they're going to continue on with their goals or whether they're going to stop. We cannot force these students to sit in the class and listen. Retention really is about instructor and students working together along with administration, but it's about students and instructors working together to complete that goal that they are looking for. So where does retention start, or where does that persistence start? How are we going to get a student to continue on? It starts in the classroom. It starts outside the classroom, really. Excuse me. It doesn't start in the classroom. It starts outside the classroom. When that student decides, I'm going to make the first step to come to classes or to enroll into a classroom. We don't have anything. If a student doesn't make that first step, then they're not in our program. We don't have anything to do with that. We can promote, we can send out flyers, we can do radio advertisements, we can put it on Facebook about our wonderful programs, because all of our programs within New Mexico are wonderful, but that retention does not start until a student makes the effort to actually step into classes. So retention involves students, instructors, and administration or administrators, okay? So we really want to think about all of us working together, but it really does start with the students and the instructors build off of that. So how do the students really start with becoming persistent in their classes? How do they want to stay in their classes? And one of the big things with students is we want to make sure that they have created a plan. Now, simply coming to classes is a great start, but if they don't have a plan, they don't have any end goals. And we want to make that clear. We don't want them to be like, oh, well, I'm going to be forever in these classes. Sure, and I know here at CCC, we definitely do have those very faithful students who have been here for 5, 6 years, but they're kind of stuck in some sort of rut because they don't want to go forward. So it's always good to create a plan, those short-term and long-term goals, which is something very hard depending on um, your population, defining what a goal is and helping them to actually move forward to that. So creating the students must create a plan that will work for them. We can definitely have, like I said, our goal is to have them in ESL classes, then transition to HSE, then transition to college or get a career or something like that. That's our plan. But students themselves need to sit down and make a plan. What are their short-term goals? And short-term is like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even like 6 months could be a short-term goal. Or what is their long-term goal? Students have to be active participants in that, and they have to create a plan and a goal that is going to work for them. Students also need to review that plan often because life happens. We can't say that it's all going to work. I think one of my favorite things about plans is I had planned that by 25, I was going to have this, I was going to be married, I was going to have kids, and now, like, not 25, and none of that has happened, but because life happens, life doesn't always go the way that we think. But it is always good to have some sort of goal because you always get to change it. You always get to see how you can better yourself. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But just because it doesn't mean that it's a failure. And students need to become involved in learning. They need to be able to ask questions, propose new topics. They need to be a big part of their learning. If they're just sitting in the classroom doing nothing, then it really means nothing to them. They need to be involved and active participants within their education. So let's look at this in action. How does this actually work? So students can create goal sheets. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love. I love doing daily goal sheets. Like, what are you going to do for today? We are here for an hour. What are your goals for today? Or you can do like a monthly goal sheet or maybe a yearly. That goes into those short and long-term goals. Now, this definitely does want to be involved around education, but you might want them to think about goals for their education and goals for them personally. It goes back and forth, which both are really good. But creating those goal sheets and having a place to store them, maybe make yourself a copy and them a copy. So that way they can always go over it and see what they're doing and how they can be participants and they can think about, all right, this is my class. This is now my responsibility. Let me see what I can do for myself. So that way I can look daily into, looking forward to coming to class, because sometimes students just lack that motivation to actually get up and go. Create a list of class rules to encourage participation in classroom. This is one of my favorites, and I do have like a class class rules presentation, not a PowerPoint, poster board, where it's like, in class, I will ask 2 questions a day, or I will do this. I will talk to my peers. I will speak 3 sentences. Like, I do have, for each class that I teach, I have a set of rules that encourage them. And these are not rules that are made by me. When we first step into class, I say, all right, what rules would you guys like to do? What would you like to achieve in this class? How would you like to learn more English? And they create the rules themselves about interacting with each other. So that way, every day when they come in, they see that class rules and they go, oh, that's right. Today I have to ask at least 2 questions, or I have to write at least 3 sentences, or I have to do something. It gives them a little bit more motivation to be part of the class. And since they have created those rules, it creates that sense of, hey, this is now my classroom because I created this. Now I am responsible to see it through. One of my favorite things to do, going to the third point, is to create a student committee or a responsibilities chart. We are now face-to-face, and so it's a little bit different, but definitely when we were online, I had where it was during one of the, I can't even remember all of my years anymore, but it was during one of our election years where we were talking about presidents and changing of responsibilities. And so I said, you know what, we're going to create this in our classroom. We're going to have a president, we're going to have like a vice president, we're going to have a technology support. And we had these different responsibilities so that each one had, we had like a hierarchy of how people were going to do it, and people who really wanted to be involved in the classroom stepped up to the plate. And we had like a little voting session, and who would be this person and who would be that person. And you could see those who really wanted to be engaged and those who were a little bit more wanted to be in the background, didn't want to be heard. But it was really exciting to see them all come together. And, we had this really nice structure of responsibilities, who would do what and how would they do it. And it created a very interesting community that I had never seen before. And this was like to really get them engaged, because we had a lot of students fall off during COVID. And so it was really hard and I had to think, how am I going to keep them engaged and keep them excited about class? And simply by creating this committee and like a responsibilities chart, like I said, you're going to be in charge of technology this day, or you're going to be doing this, you're going to be picking up the books, you're going to be wiping down tables, stuff like that. It made them excited to be in class because they never knew what was going to happen. Or if they did know, they knew that they could come in like 10 minutes early and talk, or have, talk about things that they wanted to discuss, things that they were concerned about, what they wanted to see in the classroom. It was really fun to see them really interact and build a community of students and people, not just in the classroom, but beyond. And that was a lot of fun to see develop. And the last thing that I'm really excited to kind of start in my classroom is creating a graffiti wall. Now, this is kind of a new concept, but I really like how it was put into practice. Is you just get like a big piece of paper and you put it on the wall, and students can either write like words they don't know or questions they want answered. They just go anytime during the class, before or after, and write on it. And, every day we can come in, look at those questions. And so it makes it anonymous. So because some people are a little bit nervous about talking in class, or maybe they feel like it's going to be a dumb question, or they don't want, that focus to be on them, or maybe it's a rough topic to discuss. One of the things that is commonly brought up is the idea of like immigration and, having that legal status and stuff like that. And so some of these are very difficult topics to actually come out and say. So if they just have a place where they're able to put all of their thoughts and ideas, and then we can address them as a group where nobody knows who wrote it, it makes the sense of, hey, I can bring some of these ideas and concepts into the classroom, and we won't, I won't be judged for them, or I won't feel like I'm being called out. This is really a safe place. And so I'm really excited to see that kind of how that graffiti wall would come to play, but it gives the students the abilities to bring all of their thoughts, concerns into the classroom and say, hey, this is what I want to talk about because this is what I'm thinking about. Or this is a word that I'm not sure. I'm hearing it used often and I want it explained, but I don't want the focus to be on me. Cool. Awesome. So we're going to kind of go, students have a huge part because it's all up to them. They have to take the initial set. But us as instructors, we also have a huge part as well, because we have to make sure that if they are taking the step, that we are accepting that step. So we definitely want to create a warm and welcoming environment. We want our classrooms to be as engaging as possible. One of the things when I was teaching elementary school is I decorated my classroom, and then every day I would put one new thing up so that way they had to focus and see, all right, what else is going to be new? What else is going to be engaging? How is it going to help me? But it always gave them that idea of, oh, I'm coming into a new environment that is going to help me in the future. It's not just me coming to class. It's going to be something that I know I can take whatever is presented in this class and continue on. As instructors, we have to have purpose whenever we are coming into the classroom. Now, if we are just kind of swinging it off the bat, like, I don't know who would do that. Definitely not me. Like, I never just walk into a class and say, well, whatever goes, goes today. No, I have done that a couple of times, but we do want to definitely have a purpose, because students need to feel like each class and each moment matters. We don't want to just kind of, there are going to be some days where questions pop up and you kind of have to take your lesson in a different direction, but always come with an intentional purpose. Like, this is what I have for class. If it does go a little bit different, that's fine, but at least I came with a purpose and with some sort of intention. Explore the questions that matter. Allow students to bring up topics that they really are struggling with. We want them to be able to bring, maybe they're having trouble with with their kiddos at school, or maybe they are not understanding what a letter means. Explore those questions that are going to matter the most to them. We as English instructors, we know a lot of stuff, and sometimes we forget that there's always some sort of disconnect. So we want to make sure that we are catering to them and exploring those things that they need. Encourage everyone's contributions. We want everyone to feel welcome to ask questions, incorporate questions. So that's why I say maybe make like a graffiti wall where even if somebody doesn't want to say it out loud because they're a little bit nervous, they have a safe place to put it. Or if you wanted to do maybe a box, like a contributions box, like what do you want to talk about today? What is something that you're struggling with? You have that box where everyone can contribute. If they're comfortable with speaking out loud, then that's great. But if they're not, actually have a box that, they don't know who's saying it, but if somebody's being able to bring up these difficult conversations that might come up in the classroom. Connect to diverse perspectives. People are going to be different. I know here in New Mexico, we tend to cater to a lot of Hispanics, which is great, but it's not only Hispanics or Mexicans that are coming in. We have a lot of people that are coming in from Asia or, different parts of Europe, Africa. There's so many different cultures that we need to make sure that we are connecting to everyone. Last week, I just finished talking with my supervisor because I wasn't here, and she took over one of my classes, and they had an interesting conversation about Easter because a lot of people didn't realize where Easter came from. And so it was very interesting to see how their perspective changed when they saw how it was just a blend of everything. And some people didn't even realize that it was religious. Some people did. Some people didn't realize that there was a bunny or there was eggs or how that all connected together. But that diverse perspective allowed everyone to see, hey, not everyone is on the same mindset or has the same mindset as another person. And that was a really interesting class that I really wish I had sat in on, because she said it created a lot of interaction and a lot of communication. Share and celebrate successes. We really want to make sure that we are touching everyone's successes. Now, there are going to be some people who feel like they failed, but one of the things I always tell them is, especially when students come up and they start saying, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't understand that. I don't know how to do this. I like to turn around and say, well, I'm sorry you don't know how to do it, but tell me something you do know. We want to celebrate the things that they do know, because it's always so easy to have that negative mindset that we forget to say, hey, but you are doing great in this. And then again, we do want to create that sense of community. We are a group, everyone is learning and everyone's trying to be on the same page. So we want to create that sense of community wherever we go. Now let's just take this into action a little bit. If you haven't done the TBR, whenever you're in class, you want to make sure that students are taking their education into their own hands. So think about the six trumps. Movement trumps sitting. Make sure that you're having them get up and do stuff and be interacting with their actual lessons. You don't want them to just sit there and listen, because half of the time we zone out, like I tend to do, especially when I'm talking. I'm not just here sitting and listening, but especially when I'm talking, sometimes I zone out if I'm not moving or doing anything. That's why you see my hands like going all over the place, because I do need to have some sort of movement. Talking trumps listening. You want to make sure that your students are not just hearing you speak, but that they are taking turns to either repeat or interact or have their moments to be able to speak as well. Images trump words. If you just have them reading a whole bunch of stuff, that's great, but it's not going to help them. You need to make sure that they are able to connect it with some sort of image or some sort of concept. Writing trumps reading. Make sure that they are writing some of these things. It's just one of those things that has been studied, that the more you write some of these notes down or draw pictures, something like that, it's going to help you retain the information rather than just reading it. Shorter trumps longer. Now, I am the worst at this because apparently I love to talk and I don't know when to stop. But it is, again, it's one of those things that has been studied. The shorter your lessons are, the better that they're going to remember them. A study has showed it, I think it says like the 7-minute rule is in the first 7 minutes, you want to present all of the materials that you feel are going to be most important, because that's what a student is going to remember. They're not going to remember an hour-long lecture if you are just sitting up there lecturing. They're going to remember just the key points. So shorter definitely does trump longer. And different trumps the same. Always make sure that you have some sort of variety going on in your classroom. You don't want to have the same thing. They come in, they sit down, they do their assignment, they leave. You want to make sure that it's interactive. So maybe some days they do that. Maybe some days they get up and they teach, or maybe some days they get out and they go do community activities. You want to make sure there's some sort of diversity within your classroom. Teachers, it's important to create lesson plans that are intentional. Even if they don't go the way you want them to or the way that you had thought, you always want to have a lesson plan that is prepared and that is going to be intentional for your classroom. I'm coming in, I'm going to teach this because this is going to be what we are doing next, or this is how we're going to do it. It just makes you prepared, and which is really good because students know when you are prepared or if you are not. Have students lead discussions. Have them pull out topics that are important to them, not to you, because if we could, I would discuss all of the things that I think are important, which might not be the same for them. Meet the students' needs. That could be like filling out form, understanding what is being sent home from school. If they don't understand like what holidays are, meet the students' needs, because it's important to get what they need rather than simply giving out the curriculum, which I'm not saying curriculum is bad, but you do want to definitely, for ESL students, figure out what they need. Share struggles and help create solutions. One of my favorite things is to take maybe 5 or 10 minutes and say, hey, did anybody have like some sort of problem that they were facing at home or with their students' school, and they're, hey, yeah, I didn't understand this or I didn't understand that. I don't know how I could have, create a better environment, whatever. If you share their struggles and then help them to create solutions, it creates a good sense of community, and they feel like, hey, this teacher is actually looking out for my best interest. But all in all, the biggest thing that I can say is instructors, the most important is to recognize that students are not there for you. You are there for the students. So many times we get kind of this hiccup. Okay, I'm coming to work. I'm coming. This is my paycheck, just routine in and out. That's not the point. And students will know. And this is how we get students to stay, is when we start putting the students first and say, hey, I am here for you. How can I serve you? We're not having the students serve us. It means nothing. Students can leave and then we would be, okay, whatever. But we are there for them. We are trying to help them improve. And that's how we get student retention, is when the students realize that there has been a shift. It's not that teachers are important, the students are important. We're just a teacher, and I'm grateful to be a teacher. I'm happy. I love teaching. It's something that I absolutely live for. But students need to have that sense that the instructor has the mindset to help them improve. As soon as we can show the students that we are putting them first and we are encouraging them and we are there for them and not the other way around, students will be more willing to be in class, to be engaged in class, and want to be in class. And that's how we get that retention from, that's how we get our retention from students just being there to actually participating and looking forward to being in class. And the last one is administration. And so there's not a whole lot of administration here, so I'm just going to briefly touch this. But the administration really does want to establish those coaching sessions, wants to establish connections, whether it's just calling them when they realize they missed a day of class or something like that. And not just that, but go beyond that. Hey, come out and say, hey, I'm glad you're here in class. Is there anything that you need? How is it going? Creating those connections are going to be important for any classroom, because we want to make sure that they feel safe. All of our classes should be a safe place for any student or any person coming to learn English. We also want to build curriculum. The admin wants to build curriculum that meets student needs. Again, it's all about the student. It's never about us. That's how we're going to keep our numbers up. And again, we don't want to just look at numbers. We want to see, progress and how they're going. But if we really connect to the students and we say, all right, I'm going to do this for the student, not for me, but for the student, not for our program, for the student, that's when things change, is when we have a student mindset rather than a program mindset. Awesome. And so this was just a webinar very quick, very short webinar, just to kind of get our minds thinking, because on the 25th, next Monday, we are going to discuss a little bit more of these activities that will promote retention. We're going to practice some goal setting and have student interactions. And then we're just going to have a huge share out where we're talking about experiences, asking questions, collaborating with other ELL instructors across the state. And so I know, like I said, this is just a webinar just to kind of get our brains thinking about how we could possibly keep and maintain our ELL students within the classroom. And so we're real excited. And so thank you all for joining this webinar, and I hope to see you all on the 25th for our workshop. Jamie, are there any questions in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat right now. So if anybody has any questions, we did get one other person who joined. So, Jen or Robert, if either one of you have any questions, please feel free to simply unmute, or you can put your question or comment in the chat as well.
Awesome. Y'all are awesome. So much. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody in our workshop on the 25th. If you do have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I can put my NMDELT email in the chat, and you can always, excuse me, you can always connect with me on Google Chats just by sending me a message. And if you ever have any questions, we're always here to help you with anything.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Okay, both Jen and Robert said thank you, and they left.